been a nonprofit for 10. They work with young women, teaching leadership skills through teaching them media production skills. They also work with young men and young women together in school settings and community settings, various cultural communities. I highly recommend a visit to their website, both because you can see wonderful pieces there, and also if you're excited by what they do, you can donate to them. They are a struggling nonprofit, like many youth-oriented organizations are. They also have this wonderful little thing that you can subscribe to called Freeze Frame, where they'll send you once every, I don't know, 6 weeks or maybe, I don't know, not often, but periodically a little glimpse of some of the work they're doing, a little image that's interesting, or a link off to something else. And there are over 75 pieces that have been created by these young women that live on their website. So it's a wonderful repository of work. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves more fully. But this is TVbyGIRLS.
We are very excited to be here, so thank you very much, Mary. I'm Rebecca Bullen, and I started with TVbyGIRLS about 10 years ago as one of the founding board members and founders of the program. I've been the associate director and I've had the great privilege of being a mentor over the last 10 years working with girls. So I'll let these two young women introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. I'm Molly Nemer. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I have been a part of TVbyGIRLS. I've been a core member for about 6 years now. And I'm Quednau. I'm a sophomore in college and in Washington State. And I've been a member for about 8 years.
So as Mary said, we do a lot of work with youth developing leadership skills with individuals in media to do that. And we have a few different tiers in our program. These two young women are part of our core program, and that's usually anywhere from 16 to 20 young women. And we do a year-long mentoring program with them. As you can tell, we actually continue that over years and years. And part of that is that our hope and our goal is that they actually become peer leaders. And so any workshops or events that we do as TVbyGIRLS, that they are clearly our partner in that. So that's kind of a brief introduction of who we are and what we do. We put together a keynote. Often what we'll do in our introductory workshops with you is break down the idea of what images are, what they feel like, what they need, and give them a little more rudimentary response to images. And so we'd like to go through some of that with you. And this is kind of a participatory thing. So we'd like you to shout out answers as we ask you questions. Don't raise your hands, just throw out, and we want this to be a very sort of heartfelt response. So don't overthink it. This is just a place where we want you to feel and experience. So we're going to go through that, and then we're actually going to show you some more too. So we kind of gave you a brief introduction of what TVbyGIRLS is. Nonprofit, again, it's the idea of developing leadership skills using visuals and media, reinforcing that potential for leadership. Developing critical thinking skills is really important, and that comes from the idea of looking at a lot of images. And part of that is that we are so inundated with images. We want youth to be developing ways to be able to think about what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. And also a very, very heavy component in terms of social change and social action. So this is the power of images that we're going to talk about. And then the first question for you is, where do you see images? Where do you see images all around you?
TV.
So TV.
Magazines.
Billboards. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, bathroom doors. Thank you. All over the place. They're everywhere. Clothing. All over. And about how many images do you think you see in a day? 1,000. Okay. Well, there's a little controversy. When we started doing this, even just about 8 years ago, we said there's around 1,000. Research showed there were about 1,000. Now it's actually anywhere between 1,500 to 3,000 images a day. So if you could just take a second to imagine that, or I can kind of show you what that looks like. This is 3,000 images going past you really quickly. So now, this is of course just in about a minute and a half. We have a whole day to experience that. But as you can imagine, we don't have enough time to process them all. We We may experience them on a deep level, but we don't have enough time to actually think about all of them. So yes, this is 3,000 images. So we feel really strongly that we're hardwired to experience these in an emotional way, and that they, of course, trigger emotional responses without us even necessarily thinking about it. And they trigger memories. And of course, we use them as a way to communicate. So the first game, and we're kind of rushing through what we normally take longer in the workshops to do. So the first one is an emotional game. And we're going to show you some images, and we want you to not think about it, but just to respond. What's the first emotion that you feel when you see this image? Fear. Fear. No right or wrong, so everybody has a different experience. So this is a great one because you're having a physical response. You're just not just saying something, but you're actually having a physical response to an image. So there's a little bit here, I think, of a cultural response to this as well. And as you look closer, I think you start to see more things. You know, there's more like your initial response, and then as you look closer, there's the hand on the shoulder. And that, I think, evokes a little bit of a different response. You know, there's the hand holding the gun down. So as you look deeper at images, you have deeper responses. That you're scary. Wise. When we first started showing this one, it was pretty intimidating, kind of scary. I have a much deeper sort of almost a nurturing kind of feeling when I see this little animal. This one. Graceful. Bold. Wise. Now they're the same animal, right? They're both owls. And yet these images, because of the style that they're shot in, this one's very extreme, it's very close up. This one's much more free, it has more movement flow. And so I think there's also the idea that depending on how we choose to shoot things in a camera, that they can evoke different emotions. So what do you think is the most prevalent form of the use of images? Definitely advertising. And of course, advertisers use these emotions that we feel to sell their items. They want you to have an emotional response and thus buy their product because you're feeling that emotional response. So another game. So we're going to show you some ads. Now I don't want you to tell us what they're selling product-wise, but what's the emotion that they're selling here? Family, sure. So you look at this and you want that family. An intergenerational water. I want you to sell this. And interestingly enough, when the executive director and the founder and I put this together, years ago, it was probably about 3 years later that we discovered that each year when for Passover she buys this water. So even though we were using this in our presentation, that she actually buys this water because she wants her satyrs to be like this. How about this one? Peaceful. Yes, serenity. Nature Valley granola. The hope is that as you're in the store and you're feeling, you're rushed to grab something, that you're going to make a connection to the serenity of buy this bar. So it's fun, yeah. Playful innocence, or naive. So it's a little more risky. Yeah, sensuality is kind of depending on the group of youth that we show it to, there's kind of an artistic view to it as well. It's actually plumbing fixtures. So, I asked what we're learning from all of these images, and I think a great deal of it is how do we perceive other people in our lives? It's the societal expectations. So we want to show you a couple ads, and I want you to think not from the place of what you already know about people, but pretend that you're an alien from outer space and you don't know anything about men or women. If you were to look at this ad, what does it tell you about men? This is kind of a witty ad. On one side, we've got the gentleman who is clearly sick at home, and on the other side, he's taken a labor, he's taken the medication, he's now better. So what do we know about men when they're sick? What do they do? They work at home. He's still working. He does look sad. And how are we looking at him? Where's the camera on this? What's the better than you, or you don't feel like, so it's kind of very equal. And then of course when he's well, he's an asset. Exactly. He's on his bike. And they use the witty same placement. Now here's the women's, version of the same ad again. So what do we know about women when they're sick? They stay at home, lounge around, and the camera is looking above or looking down. They're so sexy. They're still sexy when they're sick. Thank goodness. And how about when she's well? She's out having fun in her bathing suit, and again, camera angles. Now, there's no reason, side by side here, there's no reason that the genders would be switched. We often say the only reason that they would, couldn't be would be that if she were giving birth. Clearly, that couldn't be it. But otherwise, there's no reason. And again, this is a very witty ad. The problem with it is just that, again, we're learning how people are. How about this one? Missing something. It's a silly ad. It's a wireless mouse. I think it's kind of hard to read it, but he's wired to his computer, so he's clearly forgotten his wireless mouse and his payments. Now, the women's version. Now, there's no reason that they could have put a camera stall or something silly. It's just very offensive. So, again, same situation. No reason that they couldn't have been switched, or we couldn't somehow have made this ad silly. So not all images are negative. There are a lot of good ones out there that we see. This is a future chairman of the board. This is the author of Beautiful Mind. Here's an educator on Sesame Street. But this is predominantly what we're seeing out there. So what's the impact of this, and what do we do with that? And we feel really strongly that by working with youth, to talk to them about how we perceive images and what we think about them, how we feel. Because a lot of youth are making things, and some of them know the language that we're talking about, but when it comes to actually making things, they're recreating a lot of what we see. So we want them to think really strongly about what they're putting out there and how it's going to educate others. And this is a great tool for just talking about how we can connect and how we can understand each other, and just how we can learn, and also rid each other of fears and stereotypes and things like that.
Okay, so we've been working on a project called Undercover. This project was initiated by a Muslim girl named Saida, who has actually, she had actually worked with TVbyGIRLS in the past on media value, the hijab, what it represents, its importance. And so she came back to us later and told us that ever since 9/11, she's felt stereotyped, and she wanted us to share her story. So we got to discussing how we wanted to do this, and we started asking each other questions about our religions, our values, and our beliefs. And we found the conversation really interesting. So we decided to make a documentary about the religions that represent TVbyGIRLS, or that are represented in TVbyGIRLS.
Yeah, so we decided that in order to really understand each other better, we wanted to go undercover, or go in depth and immerse ourselves in a cultural practice of that religion. So we have 4 sections, one about Islam, one about Christianity, one about Judaism, and one about atheists or unaffiliated, because those were the groups represented in TVbyGIRLS. So we went through the process of interviewing religious leaders, interviewing each other, random people on the street, and mostly immersing ourselves in this activity that we chose in the activity for each section. So we're going to show you just a very rough excerpt from the completed piece.
create a piece of media where that isn't hateful and that has a lot of love in it, we can maybe help, balance that out and maybe help people understand what the truth is. From the second we sat down, it was like, so why are we making this? And we all kind of agree that we want to, help each other, we want to help other people understand everything. If I asked you a question about your religion, or if you asked me a question about my religion, it was because we wanted to know more, we wanted to help each other and be understanding. It wasn't about, attacking each other.
What is part of what makes you you? Everyone loves just telling people that because so rarely we actually get.
People can actually see you, like your face. And like before, your hair kind of feels like it's protecting you. When we went in our first undercover mission, there weren't, when we walked in the door, there was, like, it was just kind of, it wasn't a sudden change, but when we asked people who wanted to be interviewed, nobody really did. Is that because we were carrying cameras or because we were wearing hijabs? I don't know, but I think it definitely played a part that we look like we're Muslims, and I think that because it shows that when we only got one interview, that people weren't thrilled with the idea of talking about their ideas on the subject.
When we think about faith, we think of what's the pinnacle piece of the narrative to go to about what's the essential piece of the faith. And the pinnacle piece of the Christian narrative is about Jesus' death and resurrection. And so the pinnacle piece of Christianity is that the belief that God can bring new life to all of us, and bring new life to this world, and bring hope.
I was baptized at the age of 11. In a word, for me, it was kind of like being reborn.
I was baptized in a public pool 7 years ago. We were going to go for family swim night, and I said, no, I'm doing this. This is for me. I'm getting baptized. It's my way of showing God that I get it. Thank you.
Baptism in the Christian church is what we see as the way someone enters initially into the congregation and identifies themselves with the story of Christ. We say we baptize you into Christ's death and Christ's resurrection. That's going back to the whole hope that God brings new life into us. Everybody comes forward. The priest has a blessing over the water and tells the story of why we're doing this with water. We would say that we hold on to water because it's been a symbol of God purifying us, God making us holy.
Probably familiar with this, but there's the 10 commandments. One of those 10 commandments is to keep and observe the Shabbat. Now, it says in the Torah, it says, keep the Shabbos, and one time it says, it's to commemorate that God created the world and rested on the seventh day. And another time is to commemorate that God took us out of Egypt. So therefore, when it says to rest on Shabbos, when we're doing it like this, we're acknowledging that God created the world. And God said, I'm in charge. And the rest of the week, you can do your things, create things, make money, do that stuff, do creative actions to further your whatever your interests are. But on Shabbos, remember that I'm the creator, and you don't do any creative work. Now what it also is, we were slaves in Egypt. God freed us from being slaves. So So one day we say, okay, we're not slaves to technology anymore. We're not going to answer the phone. We're not going to do any of that. It's a day of rest, a day to regain our commitments to our family and to have family time, etc., etc. It's 39 general rules that you can't do these types of work. The general rule is, it's not, I mean, how we feel close to God, that's nice. But it's also nice to know how God says to feel close to God, which is in the Torah. And part of those things is just anything, any creative act.
The thing I liked about it was that, I don't know how it happened, but suddenly everyone was very open with each other. And I guess that comes from the sense of knowing that we came here to relax and we're away from things that distract us, and such things as cell phones, cameras, iPods, all that stuff were taken away. And this was a rejoicing time, I would say, to kind of like reconnect with everyone around you. And when we got really open with each other, I mainly think it had to do with the fact that we had no distractions.
We're here at the American Atheist Conference in Minneapolis, and I think there were three basic purposes for this conference. The first is instruction or education. We can learn things about science, we can learn things about politics. The second is entertainment. We've had some humorous presentations, we've had some music the first night, and then the third thing is friendship.
Atheism is such a major part of me and my personality that I can't fit in other circles and won't ever fit in other circles. But here I immediately fit in, even though someone else might be a Republican and a conservative.
To socialize with people that are like-minded and support the political movement behind it.
Atheism is simple. It's very, very simple. It's a concept that is just two parts of one word, which is A, meaning non or not, and theism, which is belief in God or gods.
To me, it is the fact that you have looked and found no evidence for God.
Not all atheists are communists or liberals or libertarians. We range in the spectrum of political beliefs like everyone else.
They think that we're two ugly people. They think that we drink a lot of more babies by the light of the full moon and a sacrifice. They think all that kind of stuff, and we don't.
Human beings, we're all human beings. We have very common dreams and aspirations. Hope to find someone to fall in love with, raise families, contribute to society. These are common human things that transcend being atheist, a Christian, Muslim, Jew. It's just a common human thing.
Single most important skill that you could learn in the 21st century is the skill of finding common ground. I lead an organization called the Interfaith Youth Corps because I think that one of the movements we have to start and build in the 21st century is a movement of interfaith cooperation led by young people. Growing up, I felt like there weren't enough people talking to me about how my faith could play a powerful role in the world, and about how my friendships with people from other religions was a model for how the world could be. America is the most religiously diverse country in human history. Never before in a single nation have so many people from so many different religions lived in close quarters with each other. Whatever conflict we hear about in the evening news or in the morning newspaper or in a classroom discussion, whether it's tension between Catholics and Protestants in Belfast, or Hindus and Muslims in Bombay, or Sunnis and Shias in Baghdad. Those groups, they live right here in America. They go to school together. They go on to college together. They work in companies together. They live in neighborhoods together. So is the pattern of conflict, the pattern of violence that exists in other countries going to become the dominant pattern here? Or are we in America going to live up to our dream live up to our possibility and create a new pattern, a new idea of relationship between different communities.
Kind of avoid the subject of religion because we know that it's not like common ground, it's not the same for both of us. And I think that it would be really helpful if we could all just kind of like, just talk about it. Let's have a conversation about everything.
And I think that's all people need to do to understand each other, just like come in with an open mind and really listen to people.
I feel like throughout the process of making Undercover, I have evolved a lot. I used to be afraid to ask other people about their religions. I was afraid to offend them. I was afraid that I would be offended, and I was afraid to sound ignorant. But now I realize that people want to talk about what they believe, and they want you to understand their religion. So it's really important to ask these questions. Also, when we were having our discussions about our religions and our views and our beliefs, we realized that there are differences in our religions, but we share a lot of similar views and values. And I think people tend to overlook these similarities, and all they notice are the differences. And people are afraid of the differences because they don't understand them.
I think also through this project, we all learned a lot about our own beliefs and our religions. I also know that, as mentioned in the film, like when we participated in these activities together and had these discussions, we also just got to know each other a lot better and on a much deeper, more meaningful level. So our hope with this project, once we finish the film, is also to develop a curriculum and then take it to schools, communities, faith communities, and share it in order to hopefully spread the openness that we all developed in the group and encourage interfaith dialogue throughout the country. Just in closing, so it's this particular piece is quite a bit around interfaith. The work that we do at TVbyGIRLS is interfaith, it's intergenerational, it's gender studies, it's just the idea that we all need to learn about each other and that media cannot be seen as just a weapon in a negative way, but that it's a tool for us all to connect and to start conversations. And again, we're so inundated and youth are constantly making work. I mean, whether it's from their cell phones to just doing things online on their computers, whatever, but that we need to start having conversations about educating and ways to use this in a really positive way. So I'm going to open this up for questions. We have time. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Are there any questions or responses?
What's the URL for the website?
TVbyGIRLS.tv.
.tv.
And again, this is just very brief excerpts. There's a lot of other studies and things that we did. The girls joined an atheist, went to an atheist picnic, and had some conversations. There was adult baptisms that we went and got to witness, and so a lot of rich experiences going into the project.
Do the girls who join make some kind of a covenant with one another? Is there a set of common expectations as to what joining entails?
The executive director and myself are predominantly the main leaders of the organization, and it's really important for us that we create a safe space, and that's something that we dialogue with them, and we could talk about, but it's really important to us that it's a safe space, that people can express themselves, and that there are definitely differing views, but that it's a place that they can feel safe to have conversations about that. So, and also just the freedom to ask things that, and we talk a lot about how you ask. What are you asking? Not in a judgmental way, but how can you ask in a way that allows the person to open up and just be honest.
With the piece on hijab, the girls that wore that, did they have any other negative experiences based on looking like Muslim women, besides people not wanting to marry?
They did, yes.
Yeah, I guess. Actually, that very same day, once we were done with that interview, we were standing in front of an empty parking spot, and someone actually pulled in, and they kind of gave us a strange look, a fearful look, and then they backed out and drove away. And at that point, we had put away our cameras, so, I mean, it made me really uncomfortable, because once one person's uncomfortable, it just kind of like spreads, and everyone's uncomfortable, and it was interesting, the situation.
Have you had a chance to measure the long-term effects of that experience?
The experience of this project or of
Your project in general?
We have surveys and things like that we've done over the years that we look at in terms of quantifying the girls' experiences and where they're going.
And what would be some of those long-term effects?
So things like, we often talk about things like some of the girls coming in and in a very sort of more isolated way, closed sort of ideas of how they look at things, or very shy, introverted, to leaving the program to go on to college or still continuing the program and being much more assertive, doing things like joining the debate camp, really starting conversations in their school, starting programs and things. So we definitely see changes in them in terms of becoming leaders. And also just, I'll tell a story just quickly about one girl who was very driven in her beliefs and was put into an interview situation with a person who had very strongly opposing. We had been working with her for a couple of years, so she was able to go in and take a breath and step back and ask questions to really open herself up to his experiences, even though they were very offensive to her. She was able to look at it in that this is his perception, this is his experience. And so they were actually able to have a dialogue where I think they both were able to give and take from it.
I also want to add that for those of us who are now in college, we've all gotten like really good scholarships. We're all going to. Yeah, so like this has clear. I think it's all like working with this program has affected us hugely, like our leadership skills and drive and leadership.
I'd like to hear from you two. How did you get involved in the first place? What drew you to do this?
Generally, the way that people have gotten involved in our organization is through workshops in various communities, or summer camps we do. I know that's how I get involved. And then kind of people who show interest will be asked back to other events. And then we just kind of develop a relationship with them. Yeah, my sister was actually part of TVbyGIRLS before I was. And I was always really jealous of her. I would tag along and I would look at the work she was doing and I was just in awe. And so finally I applied and I was more than ecstatic when I became a part of the group.
I noticed in the way the subjects were shot and edited, the video really respected the different subjects that people that were interviewed. And I don't know how much you all are involved in the shooting, the editing, and if you're taught that sort of media literacy and ethics along the way.
Yes, we're involved in all steps of the process: interviewing, filming, editing, selecting music, text, everything. So, yeah, and we have been well educated by our leaders. That's good to hear.
We'll take one more.
Okay. Is there one more question?
We were just wondering, where's your location? I guess we didn't hear about that.
Well, we're in the Twin Cities, we're in Minneapolis, and we don't actually have an office per se. We decided that because funding is difficult, that it's more important for us in terms of programming, so Barbara works out of her office and I work out of my office at home. And then we meet at the local college. We have a partnership with the college, and so it's good. But yes, in Minneapolis. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Introduce them briefly, although some of you know these folks. And the young women of TVbyGIRLS are going to stay up front so that they can also participate later on. But let me just note, Claire Bishop, who's one of our respondents, works to balance motherhood and scholarship as a stay-at-home mom of 2 boys, as well as being a PhD candidate at Emory University in religious ed and practical theology. Her dissertation, for which she was awarded a 2010-2011 Louisville Dissertation Fellowship, is entitled Body Image is Everything, Female Faith, Identity, and Religious Education. She's also the co-editor of My Red Couch and Other Stories of Seeking a Feminist Faith. Joyce Ann Mercer, I guess I'm not doing this in order, but okay, is a professor of practical theology at Virginia Theological Seminary in Alexandria. She's the author of Girl Talk, God Talk, Why Faith Matters to Teenage Girls and Their Parents. Also of Welcoming Children, The Practical Theology of Childhood, and she's the co-author of Lives to Offer, Accompanying Youth on Their Vocational Quests. Her current writing projects deal with conflict and peace building, and she recently participated with international church and civic leaders as an election observer in the Philippines. Dr. Mercer is a minister in the Presbyterian Church USA and serves her local congregation through teaching, pastoral care with elderly members, and occasional preaching. And I like this for a realization. She hikes, reads mystery novels, and plays the fiddle in an Irish band. Evelyn Parker is Associate Professor of Christian Education at Perkins School of Theology, Southern Methodist University. Parker is the editor of The Sacred Selves of Adolescent Girls, Hard Stories of Race, Class, and Gender. She's the author of Trouble Don't Last Always, Emancipatory Hope Among African American Adolescents. She's also published several chapters in journal articles on adolescent spirituality. Dr. Parker is a native of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where she grew up in the CME Church. She served the CMA Church as a local and district director of Christian Ed. She's also represented them on the World Council of Churches Faith and Order Plenary Commission, and during the World Council of Churches 9th Assembly in 2006, she was elected to the Central Committee. So our plan here is to have each of them offer a response to the TVbyGIRLS presentation, and then we'll figure out an efficient way, hopefully, to moderate some more questions and answers. So, to the panel.
When I see the work that's being done by TVbyGIRLS, I get really, really excited. It reflects what I've been hearing in my research with young women over the past 5 years, and as someone who also attended the digital storytelling workshop yesterday, I'm becoming increasingly convicted that this is a really important part of what we need to be doing with young people in our faith communities. In this video and in the girls groups that I've conducted, I hear young women express 4 desires that I think arise from living in this flow of mediated culture that I do think that this model of using digital media to tell their stories really helps to address. So I'd like to start by talking about those. First, young women desire to share their stories in a non-judgmental environment. I don't know if you caught it, but at the beginning of this video, one of the young women said they really enjoyed finding out what makes you, you, and talked about the fact that there aren't a lot of spaces where we have the time and the place to do that sort of discussion. And similarly, if I could name one sort of take-home point of my research over the past 5 years, it's the desire these young women have to share their stories in an environment where they're taken seriously, where they're respected, and where they can talk about what's really important to them. They long for the permission to be able to talk about the challenges without being labeled the friend in the group who complains about everything. And to have, you heard the girls in the video say, to have that space away where there aren't the distractions, where you have that time dedicated to this sort of discussion because it's precious in the busy lives that people lead. There's many ways that young women can be given a chance to share their stories. We have a lot of excellent models of story sharing in our community here as religious educators, of ways that we've done this. But I think video gives a special credence to it in that we live in a society where regular people become stars on reality TV and a YouTube video gets a ton of hits. And so to use the camera as a way to reflect to young women that they have important stories to share. They already have knowledge based on their experiences that the world needs to hear about. Secondly, I think young women desire to connect faith with life, but often struggle to do so and don't always have the models of how to do so. In the exit interviews at the end of my most recent research project, my favorite question to ask young people is, because I knew I'm going to be at something like this, what do you want to tell religious educators about what they need to be doing with you? And almost to the person, the young women say, listen to us, please. And then, after you've listened, help us figure out how to connect what we're telling you about what happens at school and at home and with our friends with our faith and with God. And I know, having been an educator, it is difficult to step back and take the time to listen because we're really educated. We think we know what's going to help these people. We have the answers. And I think a virtue of doing this sort of video work is that it helps us take the time to step back to really listen first. And then that's when our expertise as religious educators can really come in. After we know where the young people we're working with are coming from, we can really help them attach resources from our tradition that will help them address their experiences. And I think that's the real gift we can give them as educators. I'd like to just give an example of a video project I'm really hoping to do with my research project or with one of my research groups. We spent the better part of one session talking about how the young women feel when evolution comes up in science class in their public schools. And this was a topic I was not at all anticipating coming up, but there's a lot of emotion in the room as these Christian women talked about being very uncomfortable that a faith perspective is not taught and not really being sure how to exist in that space. And some of them even began to sort of offer tentative solutions in our group of how they were going to try to put these things together. But it seemed to me that they were really lacking a model of how to have a conversation where they could put beliefs from a scientific community in conversation with their religious beliefs. And I think to do a video project like the things we're seeing TVbyGIRLS doing, where they could interview pastors and teachers and friends and family to talk about these issues, gives them a chance to learn more about their own views, to learn about the views of others, and the chance to practice the skill, because it is a skill of talking about faith in a public venue. Thirdly, young women know that they live in a world of multiple religions, and they desire to learn more about the traditions of others, and we heard that clearly in the video. All of the young women that I've worked with talk about having at least one good friend who comes from another faith tradition, and they get frustrated, they want to learn more, and as they put it, there's usually only 3 paragraphs in their history books that tell you about other religions, and it's sort of very factual based, and they say, we want to know more than that. We want to know what are the faith practices, what does this look like when people are living their traditions. A particularly troubling issue for a number of the Christian young women that I've worked with is that they have a sense that Christianity teaches that all non-Christians go to hell. And based on their friendship and their own sense of sort of justice and caring in their tradition, they think that can't possibly be right. But they're still struggling to figure out, how do I stand firmly in my own tradition while being friends with people in other traditions? How do we have that conversation? And I think we saw an excellent example in this video by the TVbyGIRLS group, that this sort of work gives young people a chance to practice constructive and respectful dialogue across difference, to ask questions and learn about each other in a way that can move beyond stereotypes and misperceptions, a skill that is so crucial in our current world. Fourthly, young women desire to challenge stereotypes about young women and people of faith. And we saw that part of the impetus for the Undercover video was the desire to challenge the stereotypes of Muslim individuals in the media. Actually, that might not have been in the clip you saw, but you can see it online. In the research groups that I've done with Christian young women, we talk about the stereotypes of Christianity that they encounter, particularly in their public high schools. And they're very clear that when people find out they're Christian, the automatic assumption is that they are intolerant and judgmental, rejecting anyone who's not Christian and particularly hating homosexuals. But when I hear these young women talk about faith, it's not in an intolerant and judgmental way. It's in an inspiring and life-giving and expansive way that I really want other people to be able to hear. And again, that's why I think one of the virtues of this sort of digital media storytelling is that then we have a forum to share that. And when I think of the young women I work with, I want other people to hear what they're saying about faith, because I think it speaks to the continued relevance of the faith perspective, even in the midst of our mediated culture. One last thing, and perhaps most importantly, I get really excited about this kind of work because it's theological work, it's saving work, it's redemptive work. Theologian Mary Gray talks about women's redemption beginning with a journey towards self-realization and autonomy, but it doesn't end there. The journey towards self-knowledge continues throughout a lifetime, but redemption, Gray talks about, also entails living in relationships of mutuality and striving for justice. And I see a project like this, and I think they're not, TVbyGIRLS isn't necessarily coming from a religious framework, but this is theological work, and it's the type of work we can be doing in our faith communities to help support journeys towards self-realization, toward living mutually in relationships with others and working with others.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to thank the girls of TVbyGIRLS for this wonderful work, as well as their mentors and the board that has also been a part of this wonderful organization. As stated in their mission, The organization works with girls to build leadership, compassionate and collaborative working skills, critical thinking and engagement in social justice and the issues of their communities. I enjoyed reviewing the content of the website, and I appreciated you all's presentation today. Thank you so much. For my comments, I decided I wanted to focus in on, after reviewing the website, I decided to focus in on one video as it related to an interest of mine and also my research, and perhaps I hope this will be a meeting point for some of your questions and interests as well. My comments will be shaped by my attention to questions of intersectionality as this concept relates to our work as teachers, learners in the Theological Academy, our communions, and the religious organizations that we have commitments to. By intersectionality, I mean socially constructed categories of oppression and privilege, such as race, class, gender, age, sexual orientation, documentation status, and etc., that simultaneously interact to create unique life experiences. Proponents of intersectionality, such as Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins, argue the connection of socially and culturally constructed categories of oppression are inseparable determinants of inequality that interdependently form interlocking patterns. The interlocking patterns serve as a basis for developing multiple systems of domination that affect access to power and privileges, influence social relations, and construct meanings and shape people's everyday experiences. So that's the concept for which I was viewing the website. There are many, many interesting, exciting videos on TVbyGIRLS website that will provide not only questions about intersectionality, but also a number of other questions that we might start to look at and analyze as well. One could explore education of girls for critical thinking, just to start at one point as they have it on the mission statement. Of the many videos that I viewed, I want to focus on the one titled, What's with the Hijab? What's with the hijab? You saw one of the young women that was responsible for this, that was in the hijab, in the clip Undercover. This particular video won the Silver Telly Award, and at some point maybe you can tell us what that award is about. It's an 8-minute and 56-second video where 11 Somali teenage girls reflect on the hijab. These reflections are not only in their own words, but in their reflections are also seen in the movements of their bodies dancing, adorning, and touching the elements of the earth, of sand, rock, and water. The camera allows us to see their beautiful faces of various shades of brown. We see them adorn their heads and faces with the hijab. Of the girls in the video, Sadia Hassan, Sadia, is a member of TVbyGIRLS, and also I think she's a member of the Corps. Was she the person who was also on the clip in black? The girls in this video shape the discourse of their identity. They state, the hijab is Arabic for covering or to cover up. They all choose to wear the hijab, some more frequently than others, some only on occasion. It is not to hide the bald head, as one says, or not because one is having a bad hair day. The hijab is not uncomfortable. As one young lady says, it's not really hot. I come from Africa, and that place is really hot. Those who wear the hijab do so, and in their words, to respect God, self, and family. Respect for their religion. Ubah Muhammad says, every time I wear it, I feel closer to God. One teen who wears it occasionally confesses she has been Americanized, but will wear the hijab on occasion to connect with other Somali girls. There are three things that I want to mention in terms of aspects of intersectionality in this spin. First, as I wondered about the girls' critical thinking about the intersecting realities of race, gender, age, nationality, and language that would symbolize their critical thought, I realized that it was not the language that they used that was so powerful as it was the images that did the intersectional work. The words they spoke were unapologetic about their religion. The images spoke equally as clear as the words they could say. There were several cameo shots of the girls holding pictures of themselves as babies and as children and with their families, and there were group pictures with no words, a panic of their faces. These images make a clear statement of gender, race, and religion that disrupts stereotypes about Muslim girls of color. Second, issues of power that are central to intersectionality discourse is important to think about. In cases of gender oppression and privilege, power dynamics might be looked at on one level, and that is in terms of what's going on here in terms of gender. But with regards to race and nationality, we see a separation out of the issues of power. So it began to make me wonder, in terms of these images, what these girls might be experiencing in other places, such as schools, and the issues of power that come into play when there are policies put into place that will not allow them to be themselves and to wear their hijab. And as we've already heard, the problems of being stereotyped because of the hijab. So we could think about power dynamics, not only as these young people struggle to be empowered, but also those places where policies limit their own power. Thirdly, the girls in What's with the Hijab offer statements of resistance to stereotypes about religion, their bodies, saying I'm not all, nationality, as well as who they are as Somalis. They offer definitive statements about their belief in Islam and affirmations about Muslim girls. The girls speak words unapologetically. Now, I'm lifting up here that we see them in their words very clearly dismantling and disrupting those stereotypes that will label them as other, that will objectify them. And with their bodies and with their words, we see the disruption of those intersecting powers that I've described earlier. So, I have a few questions that I'd like to tease out for our conversation, and perhaps for the girls here at TVbyGIRLS. The video was created by the girls in What's Up with Hijab, as well as they were in the video themselves. I'm wondering about their agency, content, script, and editing. And I think I heard, Rebecca, is that right? That for the most part, it is their ideas that we see. But I'm also wondering what was left on the editing floor of What's Up with Hijab, and perhaps maybe some other videos. Was there ever a time, or is there ever a time, that there is some intentional conversation about the intersecting realities of race, gender, and nationality that actually takes place around these videos? I'd like to hear some conversation about that. And I'm also kind of curious about the words of the music that were in Arabic behind What's Up with Hijab. Perhaps you don't know the answer to that there. You might not know the answer to this, but those are some things I was wondering about that I'd like to ask you. And for us, I want to just get us to think about the place of intersectionality in our own teaching and learning, and our responsibility to disrupt stereotypes and powers that is important for, I think, justice teaching. here are some things that I heard while I was watching. 3,000 images a day. Ask questions to open ourselves up. Scholarships. People afraid of differences. The emotional power of images. We want it to be safe to have the conversation. We are so inundated. Could we get to know each other? Can we reach deeper? Fabulous film production. Congratulations. It's marvelous to see what is happening in terms of media literacy, particularly at this time. And I want to focus on some of my remarks on the Undercover project, a film narrating this interfaith group of girls exploring the experiences of practices of immersion in practices in several faith groups. But I want to focus in particular on the section of that project that deals with the Muslim faith practice of wearing the hijab. We have two examples of that. There's a reason I'm choosing that. During the week in October when I was working on preparing to be here, it was the same time that NPR journalist Juan Williams was fired from National Public Radio for his comments on a Fox News interview that when I get on a plane, if I see people who are in Muslim garb, I think, they are identifying themselves first and foremost as Muslims. I get worried. I get nervous. Williams' comments point out a couple of aspects of the socio-religio-political landscape related to the project Undercover of TVbyGIRLS. First, Williams' comments underscore the depth of the Islamophobia in the United States right now, perhaps in all of North America, when clothing is such an external signifier of religious identity that engenders such a reaction. Second, Williams' remarks made without any seeming presence of a self-censoring, religiously observing superego that might have halted him from saying such a thing on broadcast media, indicate how normalized this anxiety reaction to a faith group has come to be in our time. The context of such fear makes me want to know, how is it possible for young women of Muslim faith communities not to interject such a negative identity? Edward Said's observation was this: malicious generalizations about Islam have become the last acceptable form of denigration of foreign culture in the West. What is said about the Muslim mind, or the Muslim character, or the Muslim religion as a whole cannot now be said in mainstream discussions about Africans, Jews, or others with impunity. I look at the film and at the kinds of comments that you all made around showing what your project is to be an interesting example of the multiplicity of image and language. Undercover, of course, referring to both the Quranic expression of meaning about wearing the hijab, and undercover referring to the action of the girls going in to do the interviews and the filming. I tried a little experiment of my own in that vein on the way here today. I wore a headscarf on the flight. The girls in the video talk about the difference in their reception by the shopkeeper when they went in to ask about the interviews, and they were given permission to come in. And if you look at the longer video, you'll see that they talk about the person being enthusiastic to have them come and do these interviews, and then when two girls show up in clothes that marks them having a Muslim religious identity intersecting, oddly, because both look very quote-unquote Western, which is probably confusing to some folks, given what Evelyn has just talked about, they are met with quite a different response. The power of visual symbolization of identity to become such a powerful image of hatred in an atmosphere of Islamophobia is striking to me. When I got on the plane, I noticed that there wasn't quite as much chit-chat around me as usual. The headdress that I put on saved me from the usual "what do you do, oh girl, what?" conversation, for which I was grateful because it seemed that no one wanted to talk to me. The security alert was orange today. It's always orange. It was orange today, and there were extra screenings in Washington, D.C. I didn't put the scarf on until I got through security. I don't know how it would have affected. But I think what the girls showed in the project, and what I was tasting a tiny bit of today, is the way that practices of marking identity, religious identity included, have socio-political and material effects on our lives. And I wonder what those do to the spiritual meanings of those practices. So I guess that's one of my questions. How do we begin to investigate the religious and spiritual depth of various practices that are being hijacked to mean identity markers only of a problematic stereotyping imagery? What is it like to try to negotiate the identities of being young, Muslim, and female and the impact of Islamophobia? 4 quick things. The hijab is coded as socio-political rather than as religious. That identity is imputed to persons wearing it. The young women in the video remark on the frequency of the assumption that they are less free, that they have been coerced to wear it, without the people making the assumption knowing what their stories are. Third, the hijab as a material and explicit aspect of performing identity. How does this practice shape the wearer spiritually? When the hijab is so fetishized as a symbol of women's oppression in Western contexts, we don't get to explore those dimensions because of the focus on that. And then how do the responses of others to explicit religious clothing shape identity? I got on an elevator not long ago in Arlington, Virginia. I was at the hospital. I was visiting a parishioner. I had on a clergy collar, which I rarely wear, except when I'm visiting elderly parishioners because it's helpful to them. In came a young woman with a very beautiful, very silky, translucent hijab falling back on her head. 1 floor up, a woman in a full black burqa. Another floor up, a teenager with pierced navel, 3 piercings in her nose, spaghetti strap camisole. I'm thinking to myself at this time, all we need now is a rabbi. So we go 1 more floor up, and Deborah steps in, who I know is a cantor in a local, assistant in a local congregation, the synagogue. And I'm thinking, this is Washington, D.C. We were each marked by physical appearances that each signified certain aspects of identity. When we wear religiously signifying identity features, in the context of European intolerance to religious garb and in the context of Islamophobia in the United States, what happens for people who are wearing those markers of identity. I'm grateful for your work that it surfaces those conversations with girls. Thank you very, very much.
I'm going to bring this down so the girls can answer too, but let's do some questions and answers. We have about 20 minutes, and I will try to help moderate, but I have a mic, so you guys, there you are, Rebecca. Questions to any of you, or if any of you want to respond to each other or to any of the issues that have been raised. In the back. It's here.
Is that me?
That's you.
I'm Ralph Singh. I've come wearing different turbans, I suppose. But I come because I spend time with narrative in trying to create a shared narrative from all our wisdom traditions in which we can move forward in a pluralistic society. However, given the nature of your comments, I'm going to respond as a Sikh, as chair of the North American Interfaith Network's Interfaith Ed Committee that I helped put the North American 25 years ago. I helped put it together. I invite you to be there. So I spend, and I share with those people, if you want to understand interfaith dialogue, put a turban on your head and walk out onto any street. You'll immediately understand what dialogue means, more so than hijab. I wrote an op-ed about Juan Williams, and the question was, what image did he have in his mind when he said a person in Muslim garb? And I can guarantee you it was someone with a turban and beard. He's not, a woman with a hijab doesn't send shivers down his spine. And I would submit to you that in the majority of American understanding, there are 5 major religions. And it stops there. Whereas the rest of the world understands there are at least 6. And that when we talk about religious illiteracy, the illiteracy and leaving out any mention of what a Sikh is and what they believe has brought continuous harassment. We were victims of arson after September 11th at our place of worship. How we responded, we immediately went public with a prayer of forgiveness that galvanized our entire community and brought, we have 40, 50 print and media articles, but America didn't want forgiveness from a Sikh with a turban. And so the story was very powerful and continues to be. Our scripture didn't burn. I mean, there were a lot of powerful things. But I submit to you as educators that there is more to this story, much more to this story. Meaning, we have to step back and say, whose agenda is this? I loved your positioning of power and oppression. I loved it. I'll tell you right up front, I couldn't tell whether I enjoyed what you young ladies have done or what you wonderful panelists have done, and I won't call it dissecting it, but focusing our attention. And so as we who respect, perhaps, or consider to respect a higher order, a higher power, we must be called to raise these questions. We must be called to be inclusive. We must be called from our positions of power to step forward and share as much as we can and provide the opportunity to share. And I feel privileged and honored to be here with all of you today.
Other questions or comments? Reflections?
To me, the intercultural experience is similar to the inner religious experience. So, how those two are related, and how those two are different? In what focus?
Anybody in the panel want to comment, or do you want to just leave a question as an important question for us to think about?
A quick comment, but I think it's an important question that bears much more reflection. I think that the notion of intersectionality suggests that the dividing lines
quite permeable, that we can speak heuristically of someone. Well, I'll go back to Juan Williams' comments as an example. He suggested that the person on the plane was identifying themselves first and foremost as a Muslim. Now, does that mean that that identity can be extracted from markers of national identity, the gender question that you're raising, whether he had a male in a turban in his mind? The girls, if you look at the full video of Undercover, that project, you'll see that a major theme in the section that deals with the Muslim practice is about the multiplicity within Muslim religion. That there's a lot of variety and a lot of difference in practice and difference in understanding. Similarly, a lot of difference in nationality and ethnicity, and so we get much more complicated, and that's this interstructuring dynamic that I think Evelyn is talking so about.
Your question in terms of intercultural and interreligious, you're trying to see if there are overlaps or there are differences?
Yeah, there are a lot of overlap, and just out, how we have to, interpret those two layers of the whole life.
This is not a well thought out answer, but from a personal perspective, I always think about the intercultural aspects in relationship to being a guest and entering into the space of the host and the whole dynamic of guest host hospitality and how that works itself out, and how I am responsible for going in or entering into that relationship as a person who comes to learn with, to engage, to be invited in, and that's a process. It's not something that takes place overnight. And I would say that engaging across religious lines has some similarities. I think the challenge is when you have diverse cultures within one context in a classroom, and the responsibility to learn about and be a host to define the complexities of what it means to be of a particular culture. I've learned over the years how to do this by making a lot of mistakes. And I'm not arrived yet, so I want to give the impression that I've arrived at how to be a hospitable space for teaching and learning across cultures. But I have learned in terms of persons who don't enter into the space because they have been socialized to always say something, put something out there to prove that they are the ones that are informed and know. But to also set a context for those who have been socialized in different cultures where it is more appropriate to be silent and inviting. So, those cultures, I will openly set a space for them to have equal voice, to say or not to say, but to realize that I know that they are part of the conversation because they are present with their bodies and those types of things. Another, something else I've learned is that I have to, because of statistics of persons who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or intersex, set a context for their presence as well, that they are welcome because of statistics, 1 in 5. And to allow others to know that there's no homophobia, welcome in the space, and you will be silent if you try to bring that type of language in. Because persons, unless they've already come out, will not speak when they're being bashed. But to create that space for them to have to create a welcoming space for who they are as they are in that space, or as they're in the context of learning, is really important. Now that gets somewhat at cultures, that gets somewhat around gender, to create a place where everyone is welcome within the context of the classroom. That is somewhat a really important question, but not quite.
More questions, reflections, responses? Yes.
I'm always struck by this in particular. You talk about the power of image, of course, in the advertising and the use of negativity. But as this body of religious educators contemplates this, I think our question, my question for me is, how do we create in the wider public, wider society, interculturally, internationally, as well as within our own community, how do we make use of the power of the image to educate in a better way? Because we have faced in the last several months not only issues of religious intolerance, but also the central issue of the young student who committed suicide because of the image that went out on the internet. So and we hear all the stories, horror stories, bullying, these things are coming out in images, but we as a body have an opportunity to not let our digital world, so be used by other factions that we don't see the power of it to educate, to help people understand how do we go beyond tolerance, how do we go beyond simple understanding and respect in the interstate arena and dialogue, as well as understanding ourselves and what we believe individually and create a better society. It's what we're about in many ways. So
I don't want to actually put these two on the spot, but I was thinking the two of you have more experience working with images than any of us here, probably, or than most of us at least. I don't know if either of you might be willing to say something just about how do you think about what does it mean to work with images in ways that actually opens up?
Well, TV, and it's a big part of TVbyGIRLS, talking about how, so yeah, in TVbyGIRLS, we like to share our stories and make sure that they relate to other people and that they're universal, so other people understand what we're trying to say, and we do that through images. And kind of like the exercise we did earlier, when you see an image, it evokes emotion. It's just an automatic thing. And I think that's all it really is, that images mean different things to different people, but they always make you feel a certain way. I don't know if that answers the question, if that's what you're saying.
I want to, Mary?
Do you want to say anything? I mean, I guess something that I would add is that, like Molly was saying, images are more universal than our words can always be, and so that's one, I think, important thing to acknowledge, and an important way to use images is crossing lots of boundaries.
Yes, I want to promote you, because on TVbyGIRLS website there are several videos about bullying that not only that address this issue in a very provocative, thought-provoking way. So I thank you, and maybe I'm going out on a limb here. Why can't put TVbyGIRLS as a link on our own website? Because I think we
absolutely can. And in fact, if there are some you like, we'll embed them in the blog. I mean, you can absolutely do that.
So there are videos that actually address bullying as well as some issues around sexuality. There's a number of things that they've addressed, they've thought through, and they put some images out there that you really, in teaching, could juxtapose against YouTube or a number of other, harmful, objectifying videos, because they have done the work and it's really good, some really good information.
I just have a question for, I'm thinking about students now are asking very different questions. You know, how much time do you spend on Facebook? Do you have a Facebook? And there is all this intimacy, I must say, in the classroom, using images. And then there's the day where I hand out the Book of Common Prayer, and we start, and you hear them, the books kind of slam on the desk, and they open them, and I'm having a very hard time in my classroom. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are. How do we bring our traditions, the parts of our traditions that are textual, that are about holding a book? Or should we let go of that? And is that something that we should just admit is the culture of the time? And we should use projection screens. These issues that come up in schools of do we try to have bring a love of reading without images? Because to a certain degree, I feel like sometimes I'm doing the work of their imagination. That concerns me a little bit. I can rely, and it does, it evokes, and that's a wonderful word that you use, it evokes a lot. So there's just a lot of heightened energy, and I love it, that I haven't had in my classroom 10 years ago with worksheets and things like that. But what I'm worried about is that this isn't training their imagination, it's sidelining it, first of all, and second of all, making it harder for them to be in traditions who really, and I'm thinking of the bar mitzvahs I've been to, and this reverence of the book and touching it or not touching it, and how do we bring that part of our tradition with us as we embrace an image culture? And to what degree that, it was an opinion question, do you feel like maybe the notion of text was a culturally conditioned by in the first place? Maybe I shouldn't be mourning as lost.
Wow. That's a big Patricia line. There are some excellent resources in this room. One of them is named Mary Hess, who does all kinds of good work about images and text. Roger Nishioka has thought a lot about these matters. I mean, I could go around and mention the names of lots of people in this room. What I want to say about it, though, is that we're struggling with that differently, of course, depending on different generations. And the way that people are formed into religious literacy, right, depends on, in some ways, the media that they become literate in and with. And those of us who love to hold on to books are going to have some growing pains around this. You can speak to this far better. What I'm aware of, though, and what I think about is the way in which so much of the imagery, how am I going to say this? You know, doing a lot of work in the area of conflict right now, looking at the way that I've juxtaposed TVbyGIRLS as a creative, constructive, not passive recipient use of energy, where girls are constructing images that they want to offer. That's a really different move than just being in the receiving of images. And I think that has important implications for religious formation around images. In the conflict work, what I think about a lot are the ways that the use of the internet has really reshaped how we fight, and how adolescent girls in particular are being made spectacles of when they fight, and so are churches. Okay, so we have these parallel things going on. If you're an adolescent girl, and you're living in a countercultural kind of mode, if you're fighting, and so people like to film that. We have Mean Girls and all this yucky stuff on YouTube, footage of girls fighting each other, and it's really spectacle. And it gets its spectacle status in part because it's transgressive. It goes against the stereotypes of sugar and spice and everything nice. And we have churches that are fighting, Christian traditions, a lot of fighting about sexuality issues and every other thing we can think of. And that is seized on by the news media because it also is spectacle. Churches are supposed to be places where people don't fight, right? So it's exciting, it's titillating when it happens. When we fight over the internet, when we fight using digital media to have the fight, missing is the body. If I can fight with you by sending an email, I don't have to watch your face get flushed. I don't have to experience your breath
changing. I don't have to look at you and see the effect I'm having on you. Maybe there are some other things I can do in a fight if I do it over media that I can't do face-to-face though. So I guess I'm applying this to my research right now, but I'm thinking the jury is out on this question. The jury is just out on this question. We're still figuring out and developing how this is going to be, but it affects us all the way down, everywhere from how we fight to how we think of each other to our gendered understandings of who we are.
All we continue to think about is beyond sort of the physical, use the Book of Common Prayer as an example. What is it about the wisdom in that, or what is it about the tradition that is of value in that? Because that, at least with my work with high school students, that's what they really want to know. Not so much, the physical book, but why is that important to us? And after having listened to what's important to them, I do think they have a hunger to hear from us about deeply and honestly why these items and practices from our tradition are important. And then they can do the work and put it together. So maybe while we're still learning about that question, to think a different question in terms of what are the meanings we attach to symbols and practices in our tradition, why do we have those meanings, and how then do we communicate that to invite people to understand why it has been so important to us. It may be important in a different way to them, but at least we're having that conversation about why it's important.
And I think that might be a good note to end on, actually. Can we thank TVbyGIRLS and